All right, welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. Again, want to welcome everyone. Holding by the Book of Leviticus Chapter 16. We are in Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 11. And we spoke last few weeks, about the goat that was designated by Lot. So in verse 10, that was Azazel, was still alive before Hashem. We explained what that meant, and the fact it was sent out, and what type of atonement, and all that. So we're going to continue. With verse 11. Book of Leviticus chapter 16, verse 11. So the Torah says, "V'hikri v'aron es parachatos asher lo v'chiper ba'ado ba'ad beiso shachad es parachatos asher lo." So the Torah says that Aaron is going to bring his own sin offering. Right? Again, we have an offering that's brought. It says in verse 8. Right? Spent a while on this. That there are two lots that are going to be two he-goats. One is going to go to Hashem, and one is going to go, quote unquote, to Azazel. So one is going to get sacrificed, right? This goat as a sin offering is going to get sacrificed. The goat to Azazel gets, is going to get destroyed. Right? It's going to either fall off a cliff, get eaten up, whatever the case is over there. But the point is, this goat over here that Aaron is going to sacrifice, right? Remember, the other goat is not a sacrifice. This is going to be a sacrifice, right? Because the Torah says Aaron's going to bring near his own sin offering, a sin offering bull. Remember, there are two goats. He's going to bring a bull over here. It's going to atone for himself, for his household, and then he's going to slaughter his own sin offering bull. So this is going to be for the sake of himself, his family. We're going to see, what's going on, what this confession is, what this atonement is for him and his house. But we know that the other goat that's going to be sacrificed is going to be sacrificed for the sake of the Jewish people, right? That the Jewish people themselves are going to get, they themselves are going to get atonement. All right, the Rashi here explains, what does it mean he's going to atone for himself? He's going to bring this bull. He's going to atone for himself, right, and his family, etc. So here we have, as Rashi says, a second vidui, a second confession. Now, why did it say second confession? Because I go to verse 6. Verse 6 tells me Aaron's going to bring near his own sin offering, atone for himself, for his household. So there we see there's another confession. Right? They're not the same confession over here. So Rashi is pointing out there's two different confessions. Right? Obviously, again, we'll just point out here why oral law is kind of crucial. Right? Reason being that in verse 6 tells me a similar thing. Right? Verse 6 over here, it tells me there's going to be, all right, we'll just quote it here, that Aaron's going to bring his own sin offering to atone for himself and his household. So what does it sound like over here? Same thing. He's going to bring his own sin offering, bull, right? Just that mentions it's going to be a bull over here. He's going to atone for himself, for his household. Right? Then he's going to slaughter his own sin offering bull. Okay, so what's the difference? What's the difference between the verses? You say, okay, one's a little more explicit. One mentions it's going to sacrifice the bull, the other doesn't, but it's a sin offering. Right? If both verses over here say a similar thing, the Torah is never superfluous. Right? The Torah doesn't repeat things for no reason. Right? So comes along Rashi. Right now, again, Karaite's going to have to come up with their own explanation. Right? What in the world's going on over here? Because I got two verses say similarly. Right? Pretty much the same thing. Right? Not exactly, but, the inference is the same. Right? It's totally the same over here. That is going to bring a sin offering. Aaron's going to bring it. He's going to atone for himself, for his family. Right? For his household. Right? Let me just make sure. Yeah, says the same thing. He's going to bring the sin offering bull, verse 6, atone for himself or his household. Right? So what's the obvious question? Obvious question is, what do I need this verse for? This verse seems superfluous. It comes on Rashi, tells you there's a second, he has to make a second confession. Because in verse 6, there's going to be a confession. Right? Let's see if he says anything over there. 1 second. Yeah, Rashi there says he has to confess over it. Right? One thing is that's come from his own funds, meaning it's not going to come from the temple treasury. That's to come for his own funds, right? That he's going to use this bull for the sacrifice. And Rashi says in verse 6, it's going to, he has to confess. 100% he has to confess over here. So Rashi over here says, okay, if you look at verse 6, I got one confession. What's going on over here? Second confession. Not the same thing. Right? Even though I'm going to be one confession, very good. Then I only need one verse. So therefore, first thing he's telling you is it's a second confession. Right? Second confession in addition to the confession already mentioned in verse 6. Now, second thing is, he says it's going to atone for himself, meaning over himself, over his own sins. Right? That'd be simple explanation. It's going to atone for any sins he might have done, and over his brothers, the Kohanim. Right? As the Gemara says in Yuma 41b, that it's going to atone for their sins. Now, interesting enough, what does it say here? It's going to atone for himself, right? For his household. What does it mean, his household? Why does it say his household over here? Because what's the Torah tell me? He's going to bring his own sin offering. For himself, it's going to atone. For his household. Who's his household? Kohanim. Right? Over his brothers, so Kohanim means they're called his household. 100% they're called his household. How do I know? How do I know the family of Kohanim are called his household? Right? Because I got a verse. What does the verse tell me? It says the house of Aaron, bless Hashem. Right? That's Psalms chapter 135, verse 19 to 20. Right? So I learn out from a verse. I learn out from a verse over here. Now, we'll go a little bit further and we'll go back. Just finish up this Rashi here. So Rashi says, okay, very good. So what do I learn? What do I learn over here? Kohanim gain atonement through the sin offering of the Kohen Gadol. So Aaron, the high priest, is going to bring this sin offering. It's going to atone for him. And it's going to atone for all the Kohanim. The entire atonement, Rashi says, that's gained by the Kohanim through the sin offering of the Kohen Gadol. Now, what's this atonement for? What is it? The Rashi says it's only for impurity of the sanctuary and its holies. Right? In other words, if a Kohen entered the grounds of Beis HaMikdash, in the grounds of the temple, or they ate something that's holy in the state of impurity, right? Kohen's not allowed to go. Not allowed to go in the grounds of the temple if he's impure. Or he eats something which is holy became impure. Right? That's what it's talking about over here. As it says, how do I know? As it says, get another verse. All right, verse 16. What does it tell me? Thus shall he bring atonement from the sanctuary for the impurities. Right, it's the Gemara in Shavuos 12b to 13b. So let's go back. Let's go back over here. First thing is we mentioned you have a second confession. Right? First confession, verse 6. Second confession over here. Now we also have an idea that the Kohanim, the other Kohanim are going to atone. They're going to get atoned over here. Right? And they're called, why? Because Rashi's pointing out, it says atone for himself, for his household. Who's his household? So maybe it's his own family. Maybe it's immediate family, his wife, his kids. Right? His household, though, Rashi says, Kohanim are called his household. right? They're called his household. How do I know? I got a verse in Tehillim. Got a verse in Psalms, chapter 135, verse 19 to 20. Right now, verse 6, let's go back. Let's go back and understand it. Verse 6 already told me. It says that he's going to get atonement for himself, for his household. Now, in that verse, now it's a little bit different here. Let's see, in that verse, Beso, his household, right? Beso means Bayit Shalom, right? In Hebrew, it means his house, right? It means his house over here. But what does Beso normally mean? Even though that's the normal translation, right? It means his house. What does it mean in general? Talmudic literature. What does Beso mean? It can mean his house, literally. But Beso can also mean who represents his house. His wife. Right? Those households can mean his wife. So in verse 6, it says going to atone for his house, for himself and for his house. Who's his house? Not the Kohanim. It's going to be his wife. So therefore, before placing lots on the goats, what would the Kohen Gadol do? Kohen Gadol would confess on his own behalf, right? He'd confess over here for himself and for his wife. Now, in our verse, similar thing, right? It also says, Beso, his house. Now, his house cannot mean his wife. That wouldn't make any sense because we already said that. So what does his household mean over here? So that means the entire Kohanim, the entire group of Kohanim. So what did the high priest do over here? He placed the lots on the goats. So the Kohen Gadol would confess on his own behalf and the behalf of his fellow Kohanim, right? First time he confesses, who's it for him and his wife. Now it's for all the rest of the Kohanim. So it's certainly the benefits of the entire order of Kohanim that the Kohen Gadol do not confess on their behalf first. Oh, that's the novelty here. Why does Aaron the Kohen, why does he confess? Why is the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, why does he confess the sins for him and his wife first? What about the other Kohanim? Why does he not do confession for them? So the Medrash tells me that it was to the benefits of the entire Kohanim, right? The order of Kohanim, that they come second, that they don't have their confession first. Why? Because the confession of the one who's already attained atonement, as the Kohen did through his first confession, right, is more effective than one who has not. Interesting enough. Right? He doesn't confess for them first. So what do I see? He already got atonement. Aaron the Kohen. His wife already got atonement. Right? So that first confession is more effective. But the Kohen Gadol, nonetheless, going to include himself while confessing on behalf of the other Kohanim in order to atone for any sins that may have committed in the interim between the two confessions. Not much time. Interesting enough. So what's the Medrash telling you? The Medrash is telling you, well, he can confess for himself as well a second time. Because who says between the time that he confessed his sins the first time, for him and his wife, who says he didn't sin? Who says he didn't sin in the interim? Maybe he did. Right? Maybe he sinned in the interim. Right? So that'll atone for any sin he might have did in between. Right? So says the Medrash. So now I understand. Rashi's telling you there are two types of confession, or two times the confession is done. First time the confession is done is not for everybody, like the verse says over here. Not for all the Kohanim. Because the first time confession is done for himself and for his wife. Second confession is done for the other Kohanim. That's why I need two verses, right? As Rashi explains. Now, I have another issue. Right here, so Rashi explains, where do I know this from? How do I know that he's coming to atone for the rest of the Kohanim? How do I know such a thing? Right? And they're called his household. The Rashi says, I got the Psalm. I got King David over here. Psalm 135, verses 19 to 20. Now, why is the assumption over here that this verse 11, again, Leviticus chapter 16, verse 11, why is the assumption over here that when it says his house, it's not referring to his wife? Right? Maybe it's referring to his wife. Right? So here, the verse cannot be referring to Aaron's wife. Right? And here we're talking about the book of Psalms. Right? That's the quote over here. So it can't be talking about Aaron's wife. That's hundreds of years later. Right? Centuries later. After his death. So what is it talking about? Must be talking about the entire order of Kohanim. Why? Because it says over here in the book of Psalms, house of Levi, house of Israel. What does that refer to? Large group, right? The large group that is within the Jewish people. That's what it refers to, right? So that's why it says the house of Aaron, because the house of Aaron does not just mean himself. Doesn't just mean his immediate family. It means the whole group. And a lot of times in the book of Psalms, that's what King David says. The house of Levi, the house of Israel, meaning a lot of people within that group. So then Rashi says, what's the atonement? What's the entire atonement over here? That's only for impurity of the sanctuary, impurity of its holy. Right? What does that mean? And again, we mentioned that if a Kohen entered the grounds of the Beis Hamikdash and the grounds of the temple impure, or he ate something which is holy, right, that was sanctified to the temple, that he was in a state of impurity, he's not allowed to do. Or let's say he ate something that was holy and it became impure, even though when he ate it, it was pure. Right? That's what it's talking about over here. That the entire atonement gained by the Kohanim through the sin offering to the high priest is only for impurity of the sanctuary, like we mentioned, and it's holy. How do I know? How do I know? Rashi says, right? Talmud tells me. Right? Talmud tells me. And Shavuos 12b to 13b. And I get a verse. The verse in verse 16. It says, thus shall you bring atonement, that he'll bring atonement upon the sanctuary for the impurities. Now, what's the issue with that? All right, sounds very good. What's the issue? Because if you look at verse 16, we'll get there. We'll get there one day. That the verse, what is it telling me? It's talking about the goat's sin offering. Right? But what are we talking about over here? A bull offering. Right? So Rashi says that it sheds light on the bull as well, not just talking about a goat sin offering. Because about the goat, what does the Torah tell me? If you look at verse 15, Book of Leviticus Chapter 16, verse 15, it says it shall slaughter the sin offering he-goats of the people. What's the problem? What's the problem? What happened to sin offering over here? Right? So Rashi over there says, again, we'll get there. What does Rashi say? That which the bull atones on behalf of the Kohanim, the he-goat atones for behalf of the rest of the Jewish people. Oh, it's not a contradiction. I need the he-goat for the sake that the Jewish people are going to get atoned for by this he-goat. Very good. And I also understand, what's the bull going to atone for? The sins of the Kohanim. The sins of the rest of the Kohanim. Right? They have to see over there. Right? Exactly how they went out from this verse. But since the verse says the goat atones for the impurity of the sanctuary, and it's holy on behalf of the rest of Israel, so it must bleed for what? What's being atoned over here? The sin as well. right? It's going to atone for the sin as well. That the bull is going to atone on behalf of the Kohanim. Right? It's a lot of different things, a lot of different moving parts going on over here. So, Rashi also always gives simple explanation. He gives simple explanation unless he can't, unless it's too difficult, right? Very beginning of the book of Genesis, when you look at all the verses talking about creation, Rashi many times and says, I can only explain through a medrash. Can't explain it otherwise, right? It's too hard to explain, in any other way. So Rashi will say, I need a medrash to explain. But usually that Rashi is going to go according to simple explanation. But here there are a lot of different things going on, right? Here I have a clear problem. As Rashi's forewarning. I have a clear problem with another verse. And two verses are never going to say the same thing and have the same meaning. Why not? Very simple. Because God ain't going to waste words over here. Right? Totally not going to waste any words. So therefore, if the same thing seemingly is being said in the same verse, it must mean there's something else going on. Right? Because if there wasn't anything else going on, why is the Torah going to repeat it? There'd be no point to repeat it. So now, if we were all Karaites, right? We don't believe in oral law. Very good. Now give me an answer. I got two verses that say the exact same thing. Similar thing. Right? So Rashi's telling you why that's not the case. Why that's definitely not the case. Right? He's telling you also, I got a future verse 16. Right? Verse 16 over here. That's going to say that he's going to bring atonement on the sanctuary for the impurities, etc. Right? So also, right, sorry, verse 15. Meant verse 15 here. He's going to slaughter the sin offering he-goats of the people. So that's not so contradictory. Why? Because we said over here there are two types of sin offerings that are going to be brought. One's going to be a sin offering for himself, right? And for the rest of the Kohanim. What offering is that going to be? A bull. The sin offering for the sake of the Jewish people, and that's what it says pretty clear. Verse 15. He's going to slaughter the sin offering for the people, not for the Kohanim. So I can have two separate sin offerings, two different things, one a goat and one a bull for two different atonements here. One's going to give atonement for Aaron and the rest of the Kohanim. The other's going to give atonement for who? For the rest of the Jewish people. Right? But, Rashi and all the other commentators knew the Torah backwards and forwards. Right? So here, he's already alluding to, he's saying, he's already alluding to, well, what's going on in the next verse? The verse over there. Why is that not a contradiction? As Rashi explains over there. We'll get there. Right? But you got to ask the question. If I already know that, I know that verse, then it's not a question. Then it really wouldn't be a question over here. Right? The only problem is it says sin offering for both. In both verses it says sin offering. One's a goat, one's the bull. What's the difference? Rashi over here says, the Torah here itself, it says an offering, it's going to be a sin offering, it's going to bring a bull. So what's the goat offering? Then what's the difference over here? Right? So the Torah tells me. Over here it's talking about the sins of the Kohanim. That's going to atone. What's the goat offering for? Goat offering for is for the rest of the Jewish people. Right? So seemingly you have to know the commentaries backwards and forwards to see, why it may be a contradiction, may not be a contradiction, right? And, not only that, if I have two verses, as we mentioned, verse 11 over here, verse 6 before, seemingly say the exact same thing. You cannot have two verses say the exact same thing, because then you have one verse that's irrelevant here. So yeah, sometimes things are repeated, and we'll get there one day in the book of Deuteronomy. There are mitzvahs that are repeated, but there's something missing from the mitzvah when it was given before by Mount Sinai. Something added over here that we're not told before. But I cannot have two verses that say the exact same thing. So the Karaites themselves, they're going to have their own interpretations. What's the difference? What's the difference between the two verses? Seemingly they say the same thing, right? But also, there's a lot of talk. You go to the book of Exodus. There's a tremendous amount of information given over about the building of the Mishkan, right? The building of the tabernacle. There's quite a bit of information given over, and seemingly it's all the same. How big the loops and the clasps and the this and the that, right? Seems to be repeated, right? So we saw previously, in when we started chapter 12, there was quite a bit talking about saras. What we'll call spiritual cooties. I don't have a better word for it. It's a spiritual disease, that manifested itself in a physical way. For what reason? Speaking Lashon Hara. Tremendous amount of detail. Right? Tremendous amount of detail. And some things seem to be repeated. But obviously they're not repeated here, right? There are other things going on as well. But, you have a chunk of, chapters, a number of chapters, in the book of Leviticus going all through that explanation of the building of the tabernacle. So I say, so what's the point? Isn't it all repetition? Right? So you can tell me maybe it is. Right? But the commentary is going to say what the difference is and why it's so crucial that it's repeated. Right? I'll just give one example. The beginning of Parshas Vayakhel, right? In the book of Exodus. Let's see if I find it real quick. The end of the book of Exodus, chapter 30. One second. Chapter 35. Right now it's going to go into more detail, right, about the construction of the tabernacle. But what does it say at the beginning? Chapter 35, verse 1. Moses assembled the entire assembly of the children of Israel, said to them, these are things that Hashem commanded to do them. These are the things that God commanded. Verse 2, 6 days work may be done. 7 days shall be holy for you. Day of complete rest for Hashem. Whoever does work on it shall be put to death. Shall not kindle a fire any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Right now, as we'd say here in Israel, Makesher, what in the world does this have to do? And we're going to go to the next chapter after that about the building of the Mishkan. What in the world are you telling me? The laws of Shabbos. What's the connection over here to the laws of Shabbos? We know that there's a juxtaposition of verses. So therefore, verse before and the verse after should tell me something. There should be some sort of connection. So over here, what are you going to tell me? Rashi says on the spot, what's the connection to Shabbos over here? What does it have to do with the tabernacle? What does it have to do with the Mishkan? What's the answer? Answer is anything done in the Mishkan, anything done in the tabernacle, or anything similar to it, as the rabbis tell us, do not supersede Shabbos. What does it mean they don't supersede Shabbos? It means whatever was done in the tabernacle, building, destroying, cutting, ripping, riding, squeezing, other things, lighting a fire, extinguishing a fire, those things you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. So there, right after the fact, we're going to go back to the building of the Mishkan, right? The boards, the loops, the clasps, all these things. Now I'm going to go, chapter by chapter here, almost to the end, speaking about that. But I have a verse. Thrown out, seemingly, coming from left field, out of nowhere, right? Totally out of nowhere. It's telling me you got to keep Shabbos. Don't I already know that? I know it from Exodus chapter 19. I know it from Exodus chapter 20. I know it from other sources before. You don't have to tell me to keep Shabbos. I knew that. So why does the Torah throw it in? Especially over there, seemingly it's got no connection. Comes on Rashi and says, no, there is a connection. There is a direct connection. What's a direct connection? Direct connection tells me anything done in the tabernacle, anything done in the Mishkan does not supersede Shabbos. So anything that was done in the tabernacle, if you did it on Shabbos, it's a Torah prohibition if it's exactly done the same way. If it's something that's similar, it'd be a rabbinic prohibition. Why rabbinic prohibition? So why the rabbis make a fence around the Torah here? They're not adding to the Torah, they're making a fence around it. Because they're telling you, we don't want you to desecrate a more severe prohibition. What's the more severe prohibition? Torah prohibition. So they're going to make a fence around and say, just like it says over there, Exodus chapter 35, verse 2, the Torah there tells me you're not allowed to kindle a fire. Gee, what about an electric oven? Gee, what about a gas oven? What about a microwave? Is that similar to fire? What about electricity? People say, I turn on the switch, off the switch. I'm not doing anything. Why should that be forbidden? You're not doing anything. So whatever the prohibition for electricity is, right? The whole disagreement what the prohibition is, whether it can be considered, you're turning on a current or turning it off, or maybe it's similar to fire, right? Or it's building, whatever the prohibition is. Kaufman's answer would be very simple. Take off the plastic, right? Take off the plastic to your outlet, take a screwdriver and stick it in. Now people are going to say, that's the wackiest thing I ever heard. Good reason, another good reason not to listen to me. Why in the world would I do such a thing? Well, you're not doing anything. You flicked on and off the switch. All I'm telling you is stick a screwdriver in the switch. It's not doing anything. What are you talking about? If I do that, I'm going to get electrocuted. You just told me it's not doing anything. I turn it on, I turn it off. It's no big deal. Oh, it is a big deal. There is something going on, right? There's an electric current going on there, isn't there? Nod your head. There's an electric current. I turn it on, turn it off, right? Not like nothing's going on, right? So now the question is, by fire, does it really mean, 100% fire like we understand what fire is? Or what about anything similar to fire? What about gas? Rabbis didn't have gas back then, right? Torah doesn't speak about gas. Before gas. Before electric doesn't do the same thing. I advise anyone doesn't think it does the same thing, right? Turn it, if you got an electric stove, right? Or let's say gas stove, either one, doesn't matter. Turn it on, let it go for a little bit, stick your hand straight in it. Stick your nose even better. Stick your nose straight in it. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to burn it. Oh, very good. Very good. If you burn it, that's the same thing as fire. Similar. Definitely similar. Does the same thing. Microwave, whole question. Doesn't do the same thing. It gets very hot. Doesn't work the same way as an oven. Right? Not the same at all. In different ways. But the point is, it does something. So also should be forbidden. And any electronic device, the device should be, forbidden. What about a car? You don't have to drive a car on Shabbos. Every time you put your foot on the gas, imagine you're destroying thousands of acres, of trees through that. Why? You're making a fire every single second. And a person smokes, inhale, exhale. What are you doing? What are you doing on Shabbos? Putting out and lighting cigarette at the same time. Does the same thing. You help burn it, you help put it out. Right? A car is a better example. Every second, you're making a new fire. Multiple fires, multiply it by infinity. So anyone who thinks you're going to say, well, driving my car is not work. Work has nothing to do with anything. It's just how we define. That's the English term for malacha. We define it as work, right? So someone can say, well, I'm driving and you're walking half a mile. You're doing more work. Well, guess what? if I had the choice, if I wanted to, I could take my sofa, which wouldn't make any sense here, but I could take my sofa and I can move it up and down. I can move it all over my living room all day long. But you're doing a lot of work. You're right. It's not forbidden. I transgress Kaufman's 614th commandment. Don't be stupid, right? No one's going to do that. But okay, if I did it, did I transgress anything? No. I didn't transgress anything. So, starting a car, driving a car, a fire is being burnt every second, multiple times. Multiple times. You're going to say, but it's not work. It's fire, isn't it? Similar to fire. Many will claim it is actual fire. That's what it does. And it gets extremely hot. And we know if things don't go right, car can overheat. So what's the permissibility to drive on Shabbos? There is none. Now, the conservative movement over here, what do? So on their books, their rabbis will claim, guess what? They'll say it's only permissible to go back and forth to synagogue. You're not allowed to go shopping, you're not allowed to do anything else. Right? So that's a minority opinion. The minority opinion according to them. Today it doesn't really matter because they don't hold according to Jewish law anyway. Right? So it's really a moot point. Right? It's a minority opinion, according to them, that you're allowed to drive to synagogue, but you can't drive anywhere else. Now, how many people, if they want to consider themselves conservative Jews, know that? Probably nobody. I know it because I was there. Most people have no clue. I'm not doing anything wrong. Oh, I'm conservative. It's okay. The Torah over there, look, Exodus chapter 35. Go look it up. I quoted it. 35 verse 2. Verse 3 talks about not kindling a fire. Or 3 or 4, whatever it is. Right? Let me just quote it properly here. So I have people jumping up and say, you quoted it wrong. Okay. Right? Chapter 35. Keep it open this time. Chapter 35, verse 3. You shall not kindle a fire any of your dwellings on the Sabbath day. Right? So Kaufman's question, what's a fire? Isn't starting a car a fire? You're making a fire? Multiple fire. All at once. So it only says don't kindle a fire. Here you're doing it 1,000 times. 1,000 times every minute. Multiply that by infinity. Oh, it's no big deal. Not really doing any work. Oh, that's not really a fire. Really? So I'll give someone some homework. No one's going to do this, but I'll give homework anyway. Start your car, let it run, stick your hand in the engine. See if it gets really hot. Even if it doesn't overheat, doesn't matter. It gets pretty hot. It gets pretty hot. So the person knows how a car works. That's what happens. 100% that's what happens. So you're not allowed to kindle a fire. So this is a Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition. So this you'll tell me, wow, it's not exactly the same thing as a fire. You're kindling a fire. No, I don't think it's that radically different. Not radically different. So a person does that and they think it's okay. Okay, think again. Even if you want to say, according to the conservative movement, they say, fine, I'm going to drive to synagogue and I'll drive other places also. Who says that's permissible even according to them? Because they only hold you allowed to drive to synagogue. Nobody knows this. That's why I'm pointing it out. They're only allowed to drive to synagogue. That makes sense? Totally doesn't make sense. But it's a minority opinion anyway. Today it doesn't matter. People do what they want. They're not holding according to Jewish law anyway. Right? So it's a moot point. So I just wanted to point out. Right? There's juxtaposition of verses. And juxtaposition of verses have ramifications. Huge ramifications. So now we have to understand. We have to see how it works. Right? We have to see how it works over here. So there are a few questions here. One, someone asked, pagan Gentiles also go to Gehenna or they simply destroy? Well, if they believe in idolatry, they worship idols, that's one of the no idol laws. punishment for idolatry is what? Death. Death penalty. Not everything a non-Jew does that they transgress the Noahide laws is death penalty. There are some. That's one of them. Right? They get death penalty. They don't get fixed up over here. There's no warning, technically speaking. If this could be done, you know, a Jew sees a non-Jew bowing down to an idol, technically you can kill them on the spot. You don't have to warn them. Their death is their warning. You don't have to warn them. Because every non-Jew should know idolatry is forbidden. You're going to say, but they never learned, they were never taught. Doesn't matter. This is something they should know. Bowing down to a guy in a stick, short little fat guy, Mr. Buddha himself, you know, bowing down to things that have no power, even if they think they're power, whatever, they're wrong. They should have looked into the world. They made a serious mistake. Very good. So they're going to get destroyed. Going to Gehenna, going to hell, let's understand. That's a purification process. Right? In other words, a person who gets to hell after they die, it's a purification process. Right? That means your soul is going to get purged of all the sins it's done. And if there's anything left of it, hopefully there is. If there's anything left of it, it's going to go to Gan Eden. It's going to go to paradise. It's going to have a portion of the world to come. If a person, you know, we'll make it easy on a Jew. If a person is really bad, really seriously bad, you know, they're going to get obliterated. They're not going to have the opportunity. They're going to have the opportunity to go to Gehenna, to go to hell. Why not? Because God's going to give their reward in this world. They might have helped Granny cross the street. They might have given charity once in their lives, so God has to reward them. He has to reward them for what they've done in this world. That's what he has to do. It's only fair. But they're going to get so severely punished, there ain't going to be anything left of them. Now, even though we're a week away from Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, the Gemara says there are 3 books that are open. There's a book for the truly righteous. There's a book for the truly evil. There's a book for everyone in between. The truly righteous, they'll be written in the book of life. The truly evil, they'll be written in the book of death. Right? Now, a person's going to say, okay, let's say they're written in the book of death, but they're still alive. You see them, they're still alive, and they deserve to die, let's say. Why are they still alive? So what would my Rebbe say? My Rebbe would say, guess what? Look how they live their lives. They do things according to whatever the desire tells them to do. You know, to eat, not to eat, this, that, whatever they do according to their desires. So who are they subservient to in this world? Their hearts. They're subservient to their heart over here. So that means someone's really alive. That means someone like that's really alive. They're not really alive. They're dead. Really, they're dead. They're just lacking burial over here. So you see how they live their lives. They live their lives without thinking, without doing anything. Most important question. Kaufman always says, what are people going to ask? What's the most important question they ever ask? Ketchup or mustard on a hot dog, or relish, or sauerkraut, whatever. Ketchup or mustard, easy enough. I don't want to confuse people. That's where the whole thing in the world. They'll talk about sports, they'll talk about politics, talk everything that has no meaning in life. Right? Except the real thing. So people like that, are they really considered alive? I don't think they're considered alive. Rabbi would, you know, that's what he would say. They're not considered alive. They live like animals. They live like animals, they die like animals. You know, some may be a little bit more moral than others, you know, some less, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. There's no anchor for them. The anchor of morality is do whatever you want. Just don't get caught. That's, you know, and a lot of times, you know, you hear that people got caught, they did things, they don't have remorse. They don't say, you know, what's the worst part? They got caught. They don't say, oh, I really feel bad. Can't believe I did this. How could it have happened? We know, because you were greedy. You know, we know because whatever reason, person did what they did. Right? So, you know, so people like that, even when they're alive, they're considered dead. You're going to say, wow, a lot of people out there, you know, they're very intelligent and this. Okay, so what? Someone's got a PhD, pilot higher and deeper, or Papa has dough. right? So they just convince themselves. Maybe they're a little bit more smart. They're more smarter than other people, a little bit. Okay, so what? When it comes to Judaism, they get a 0. They get an F-. They don't know anything. They talk a big game. Met some of these people. They talk a big game. They don't know anything. They know 0. So someone's going to tell you about Judaism, they can't read Hebrew. They've never studied. They've never learned anything. They never read the Bible from cover to cover. We're going to take what they say seriously? Come on. I got a PhD. Very good. So what? You got a PhD in what? So what if you got a PhD? It has nothing to do with Judaism. And I think this and I think that. Okay, people, let them think what they want. The waste of time. I'm going to hear what they think about Judaism. Really? Sometimes people to bring my attention, certain, actors, actresses, that are Jewish, that'll make comments about, Judaism. Oh, it's archaic. Oh, it's this. Really? Why in the world are you going to take what they say seriously? So the person knows how to act, maybe. Maybe we'll give some credit here, a little bit. Right? So maybe they know how to do certain things. Fine. I'm going to take what they say seriously about Judaism. If you tell me they got a PhD in Judaism, okay. Let's have a discussion. We'll go source for source. Let's see. Let's see what they really know. Right? A lot of these people, they don't know anything. They never thought about anything. They don't know anything. I'm going to get upset. They say something. I'm going to lose any sleep. People are idiots. Total idiots. Totally not happy either. Right? Leaving moral lives. That's what they do. So these people are more dead than alive. Right? That's exactly what my Rebbe says. If you don't have Torah in your life, then it's all fantasy. You have no anchor. So it's going to keep you moral. There are people that have some morals. Okay? There are some. Right? But when you dig a little bit deeper, a person can say, I'm good and I'm a moral person. Okay, did you ever cheat on your taxes? That's different. Okay, so I hid a little bit of money. Everybody does. I didn't declare certain things. Well, Torah tells me that's stealing. Right? If it's not a legal loophole, stealing. Who says you're allowed to steal? No, that's different. Uncle Sam, he takes too much. Right? He's taking 25% or more. So it says, it's called the law of the land. Can't go against the law of the land. Right? You got to clear. You got to clear over here. Now that's different. So then you say, well, isn't it true that, you cut off your father's pacemaker? Well, he's going to die anyway. True. Cut off the pacemaker, instead of dying in 6 hours, dies in 2 hours. That's murder. No, that's mercy. Right? I heard someone say this at a mourner's house. That's what they said about their father. They cut off the pacemaker. We couldn't see him suffer anymore. That's murder. If he's going to die in 2 hours and you hastened it, if he's going to die in 6 hours and you hastened it and he dies in 2 hours, that's murder. You're accelerating death. No, that's different. That's mercy. Yeah, so where does morality go over here? Morality goes 100% out the window. Right? If it fits my agenda, then it's good. If it doesn't fit my agenda, okay. I'm not going to say, there are people that are more moral, less moral, but what's making them? What's keeping them on the straight and narrow path that's keeping them moral? Whatever their mind tells them. Whatever their heart tells them. They'll say, there's something I would never, ever do. Okay? Right? So that's good, let's say. But there are plenty of other things you don't think there's anything wrong with. Embarrassing someone in public, you don't think there's anything wrong with that. Making fun of people, you don't think there's anything wrong with that. The whole laundry list over here, it's very easy. Very easy to pinpoint. So they have their own answers. But that would be my question. Where does it start? Where does it end? Heard a great rabbi once say, I'd be more than happy to send my kids to university if I would know 100% they're going to come out more moral if as moral or more moral than they are right now. Now, what are the odds of that? Zero. Especially what's going on in universities today. Especially if you live on campus. Right? What's going on? So we're not going to go there. I can spend the next 3 hours speaking about that. But okay. The idea is that, people like that, we're going to take seriously what they say. Because they don't know. If they admit, I don't know, okay? This is my opinion. Oh, then you break them down. Really? So what's your opinion based on? So I had somebody in the middle of a conversation. I think I mentioned more than once. Having a conversation. The person came out and said, I feel I'm I'm a good person. So I said, this is my opportunity. This is my opportunity. I said, what's your definition of good? So what's your definition? And then, I started asking a few other questions. Well, would you ever do this? Would you ever do that? Is that really good? What's the base for saying something is good? Is it absolute? Does it change? Person, after I started asking a number of pinpointed questions, basically backed them into a corner. They said, I don't know how we had this conversation or where this conversation came from. I'm stopping it right now. Yeah, you know why you're stopping it? Because I just nailed you. I just nailed you and put you in a corner. Right? And I was going for the knockout blow, but they said, no, we're going to stop right now. Because they knew. Right? They knew exactly where it was going. It doesn't matter, whatever. So people are not as open-minded, right? That we've shown. That we've seen many times. Right? But a person has to know, certainly by non-Jews, certain things they do, they're not going to get a chance to get fixed up because they get death penalty. Now, there are things that they would do, they don't get death penalty. Depends what it is. Right? Depends what it is. If they're idolaters, we mentioned, they're going to get the death penalty. Right? Immorality, they'll get the death penalty. So it depends. Depends what it is. If they took a peach and a plum, put it together, made a nectarine, right? If they made a nectarine, they're not going to get death penalty. It's forbidden, but it's not death penalty. Right? So certain things that will be death penalty, certain things won't. So if that's true, then the question is, the pagan Gentiles also go to Gehenna? No. They won't, because Gehenna fixes people up. It purges them of their sins. If it purges them of their sins, and that's a benefit, they're not going to get the benefit here. Why not? Because idolatry for a non-Jew is a Torah prohibition. Torah prohibition. Doesn't matter. They were brainwashed. Doesn't matter. They grew up in India and everyone's worshiping cows and who knows what. So what? I got plenty of people from India, Bangladesh, all these countries. They want to be Noahites or they want to convert, but they can't move or whatever the case is. So people can get information, right? So I've had somebody say many times, at least once. I dealt with this once, but it comes up every so often, right? And but it's not their fault. Why would God wipe them out? Well, whose fault is it? Someone will claim it's our fault, it's the Jewish people's fault, because we're not out there trying to bring non-Jews closer to their mitzvahs. Who says that's my job? Not my job. Someone comes to me, they want to know about the Noahide laws, they want to be a JIT, they want to learn about conversion. Okay. Am I out there proselytizing? Got accused of that also. You advertise this and that. Yeah, I advertise what I do. I don't convince people to convert or not. It's not my job. Not part of my job description. If they want to be the real deal. They want all the mitzvahs and everything comes with it. Okay. And you're willing to do whatever it takes. Good. I had someone tell me he still likes shrimp. I'm not going to convert. I still like shrimp. Okay. Right. So you can eat shrimp as a non-Jew. Not a problem. Totally not a problem. Right. We're not out here to convince anybody. You want to learn? Great. Well, how are they supposed to get the information? Guess what? There's something called the internet. People get all kinds of information, mostly bad. But they can get information if they want it. Everybody can get information. It's not hard. Question is, if you want it, and what you're going to do with it, even better. Because there are people I've heard many people say, the last straw being a Christian is I'm afraid I'm going to fry in hell forever, right? So that held them back for a long time before they looked to see what Jews for Judaism says, what Rabbi Singer says, what Rabbi Skobach says. That's like the last straw. When they see too many contradictions, they don't have answers. Then they look online, they say, maybe someone's got an answer. This doesn't make sense. And they come across that. Right? People can find information. It's a pretty big miracle. People find me. I'm always amazed. It's like, hey, how'd you find me? So, people, if they want it bad enough, the Talmud says clear. If somebody wants to go in the right path, God will help them. If they want to go in the wrong path, God won't stop them. Right? They can have it either way. So someone will claim, but it's not fair. Look at all these people are going to get wiped off the face of the map. Okay, so what should we do? What should we do? Didn't God give everyone a brain? As long as someone's not mentally challenged, everyone's got a brain. People convince themselves of all kinds of things. In the vast majority, people, Jews included, they're not interested. You got 13.5 million Jews don't know anything about Judaism. They don't know Aleph Beis. But they have an agenda. They totally have an agenda. And people, I've had people trying to, but that's your opinion. And that's, your brand of Judaism. Who says for everybody? Because the Torah tells me. Torah doesn't tell me you can pick and choose. Where does it say that? Right? I'm looking for the verses. Show me. Where's the thing? No, it doesn't matter. I'm going to do what I want to do. That's not what Torah is. Torah is I'm in for life as a Jew. You have no choice. Non-Jews, you have a choice. You don't have to go through conversion. Right? But if you want to go through conversion, you have to know what to do. But people say all kinds of things. It's just, I would never make statements in general. And I always say, this is my opinion, take it for what it's worth. I would never, in general, make statements if I don't know anything about the topic. I mean, I might make a comment here and there, right? But I'll say, not my area of expertise. I got to go to someone who's an expert in this field, whatever it is, right? But people look kind of foolish when they open up their mouths and they read they read an article in the newspaper, they see something in Wikipedia, they see something on the internet. Now they're an expert because they read one article, like they're an expert. When it comes to Judaism, it's pretty amazing. I mean, there are other topics also, other subjects also. I'm not going to pick on Judaism here, right? But this is what I do, so I see it a lot. And people will make statements, and they're like very passionate. They'll make passionate statements about things they don't know anything about, nothing. And we have to sit there and respect it. You got to be careful. Who you're dealing with. And seeing if they're asking something and they're being obnoxious, or they're just asking because they want to ask because they have a question. Okay, but if they have an agenda, as we said before, right, by the evil son in the Haggadah, you don't give him an answer. You don't even give him an answer. You blunt his teeth. Why do you blunt his teeth? Because he's got an agenda. The more you answer him, the more he's going to get fired up. You're not interested in an answer. So can you answer an answer? No. There's no point. If someone's really seriously interested in an answer, okay, then they deserve an answer. If you don't know the answer, tell them, listen, not the world's greatest expert. Let me get you an answer. I'll get back to you. That's being honest. Then giving an answer that probably may not be true. But at the same time, you have to see, where the question is coming from. Because most people are not necessarily, they're not necessarily that cruel. They're not necessarily looking at, not looking to pick a fight, right? Has anyone ever heard the old adage, we can agree to disagree? That means they're not willing to even argue. Why aren't they willing to argue? Because they have a lot to lose. They have a heck of a lot to lose, right? I've told some people, many times, this stuff, whatever, is like, they'll say something, make a statement. I was like, I really believe this is true. I don't have any doubts. Like, I don't have one doubt, that this is true. Like, well, that's good for you. So I said, there are no doubts over here. Right? I'm just trying to see if they're going to take the bait, right? We don't have doubts. We don't always have clear-cut answers, but we don't have doubts it's true. right? Many different ways to prove it's true. It's not the point here, right? The point is, people say things. You have to see where they're coming from. I mentioned last night, Pirkei Avos. People make statements, and people, I've heard statements where they're saying, "Oh, Orthodox Jews, this, that, and the other thing." So I'm very quick to answer. That, by the way, you are speaking to an Orthodox Jew. You just included me in that tirade. That would make you a racist. Because if I would say it about Black people, Hispanics, Chinese, Asian, whoever, you're going to say, "Oh, see, Kaufman's a racist. Look what he said." He lumped a whole group of people together and just totally disparaged them for whatever reason. And you do that about us, me included. Why is that being racist, even if you're a Jew? Why is that being racist? Oh, but I got a reason. I can back it up. Oh, what do you mean you can back it up? Well, look at Jews do this, that, and the other thing. Some, maybe there are some Jews that do certain things that are wrong. Okay? Doesn't mean it's right. Right? Not going to whitewash it. Doesn't mean what people do is right. If they steal, they manipulate, they commit fraud, even if they're Orthodox Jews, wrong. No one's going to deny that's totally wrong. So you're going to say, "Oh, they're more susceptible." Why are they more susceptible? Why, what are you going to say? All ultra-Orthodox Jews are poor? Not true. Totally not true. There's a lot of wealth in the Orthodox community, right? Tremendous amount of wealth as well. There are poor people also. I'm not going to say not, right? But you're going to say, "Oh, they're sponges. They have no money." Really? A lot of people can barely speak English, making very good money. Spoke about this last week. Not going to go into it, right? Making very good money. They don't have high mathematics under their belts. They don't have, high level English grammar under their belt. So what? They're running nursing homes. They're in real estate. They're in diamonds. They're in other things that are making good money. Now, does that mean everybody? No. Certainly not. Right? But if, you got to make a statement and say, "Oh, all these people like this and like that." Well, there are reasons for things. You can just make blanket statements. You have to understand, people are saying, "Oh, look, the Orthodox community during Corona," right? I'm not going to speak about Corona, but look, they're spreading the disease. Well, look what they're doing. They don't hold by the laws. This, that wasn't true, right? But let's understand it in an Orthodox community. Especially here in Israel, a lot of people live in apartment buildings. When people live in apartment buildings, you would think, where do people get Corona the most? People say, "Oh, see, they were in synagogue." That's not where it came from. That's a factor, wasn't the factor. What was the main factor? One person, the family got it, everybody got it. Right? You can say, "Oh, they have too many kids." Come on, the list goes on. But if you know the demographics, if you know how the demographics work, it's not about whether they're wearing masks or not. Right? We're not even going to go into that, whether it helps, doesn't help. Whatever the case is. But the problem is, you live in a house, and one person gets it, and everyone's close together. Guess what? A lot of people are going to get it. A lot of people are going to get it. But people don't care about demographics. People don't care what the issue is. What do? They say, "Oh, Orthodox Jews this. Orthodox Jews that." Now, again, we're our own worst enemy. Plenty of things we do wrong. And we're at the forefront. People are going to look at us, not necessarily secular Jews. Secular Jews will get it also. But, if a secular Jew doesn't keep Torah and mitzvahs, okay, they do something wrong, it's bad. Not going to say no, it's bad. An Orthodox Jew does something wrong, they get caught, it gets plastered all over the place, that's worse. That's worse. Why? Because what sells newspapers? I know people still read newspapers today. What sells newspapers? Right? If you say "dog bites man," not such a story. Right? Not going to be such a story. You put in the headlines, "man bites dog," that's a story. That's a story. Because the ultra-Orthodox community, it doesn't happen all that often. It happens, so I'm not going to say not. Yeah, maybe sometimes, a little more often than it should be. But okay, we're human, we have an evil inclination, just like anybody else does. Right? But it shouldn't be. Totally shouldn't be. Ultra-Orthodox communities, or even modern communities, doesn't matter. Right? If it's a total community, meaning there are no non-Jews there, right? Is there any crime? There's no crime. right? No crime in such a place. Totally no crime, right? Why is that? Because Jews don't normally steal from other Jews. They don't normally steal in general. It's not part of their nature, right? But if, a person either is desperate or other things may happen and they go further away from the source, right? I either go away from Torah, so then they're no different than non-Jews. No different than secular Jews. They don't have an anchor, right? They can make mistakes, okay? Right? We're human. Nobody said anyone's perfect over here. The point is that we have a higher responsibility, a greater responsibility. By having a greater responsibility, that means we better be darn careful when we're outside in quote unquote the real world. We want to be squeaky clean. We don't want anyone to have any claim, say nothing. Say nothing. You're in a bank, you wait in line, you don't push, you don't do any of that. You don't drive like a maniac on the road, even if you're in a rush, right? There are certain things, you got to say, well, isn't that obvious? It's obvious. There are certain things that are obvious. Some people, I don't know, some people never got the message. Not sure why, right? Things like this, I don't answer why people, do this or do that. There are certain things I think should be obvious. Should be, but they're not. Either they were never taught or it just wasn't so important to them. That's the only answer I have. But, we have to uphold the Torah to the highest level. That's our obligation. I hear non-Jews say many, many times, to be part of the Jewish people is a huge responsibility. And my answer always is, halavai Jews should think that. So many Jews embarrassed to be Jews. Halavai they should think, oh, what a responsibility to the world. They don't think that. They think Judaism is something to be ashamed of. Something that has no meaning. Something, you're just Jewish to get picked on. You're just born in the wrong family, maybe. Right? There are no mistakes here. Question is what we do. How we embrace what the Torah says. Yeah, we can make a mistake. And when we make a mistake, the repercussions are catastrophic, can be catastrophic. Because once damage has been done, and it doesn't really matter why, and we're a lot of times not given the benefit of the doubt. So let's say something's done, and that makes an impression. That's your chance to make a good impression. You made a bad impression. And now the person, for better or for worse, is going to say, oh, Orthodox Jews this, Orthodox Jews that. Person could be going through a tough time. They were in a rush. They weren't paying attention. They bumped into someone. They said, excuse me, this, that. Okay, we got to be careful. 100% we have to be careful. We're never given the benefit of the doubt. Once damage has been done, it's sort of like, let's say, New York Times commits libel against somebody. Can't imagine such a thing. Imagine they would commit libel, right? And now they have to retract it. What would they do? Is the retraction going to go on page 1, front page? No. Going to go on page 2? No. Probably page 247 in a corner where you need bifocals to read it. So who cares they made a retraction? They should make a retraction, true. 100%, if that's the case. But the point is they already smeared the person. Once the person is already smeared, once the person is already demolished, how can you fix that? Can't. Right? Very, very hard. Very, very hard. And even, all we need, God forbid, is one person to slip up. One person to make a mistake. That ruins everything for everybody. Right? Because the Jews, as the Gemara says, the Jews are all intertwined. One person does something wrong, we all get blamed. You don't see it by any other nation. Right? As we said many times, an Italian in Brooklyn does something, even if it's something egregious, people are going to say, no, we're going to burn down Italy. No more cannolis. Never happened. Never happened. Not to any nation. Why not? Because someone, whatever nationality they are, they do something and you can say, oh, they all do that. Right? That'd be a racist statement. Right? But then it's not collective punishment. Only by Jews. They only see it by Jews. One person does something, we all get blamed. Right? It doesn't make sense except for the fact that Talmud tells me we're all intertwined. Right? We're all intertwined over here. We don't see it by any other nation. None. Right? So, so we have to realize we make or break our image. We have the ability to demolish it, just by doing even something minor. That by other people, they wouldn't even look at it. They wouldn't even sniff at it. Wouldn't make any difference whatsoever. Oh, but you're dressed up as an Orthodox Jew. It's a problem. So you're going to say, don't dress up like that. Go incognito. Go in hiding. They put on a baseball cap. You don't wear a suit, this, that. But this is who we are. This is who we are. That's our uniform. So we're more identifiable than other groups. True? But okay. So we have to be careful. We have to be extremely careful here. Somebody asks a bunch of questions here. Somebody asks, a person allowed to rollerblade on Shabbos? Technically, it shouldn't be a problem. But it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. Riding a bike is more of a problem. Right? Why would riding a bike be a problem? Because in case something breaks, chain comes off, I don't know, something happens. Where are you going to fix it? Right? It's one of the questions when my wife was becoming religious, asked a conservative rabbi. Right? She asked a conservative rabbi the following question. Right? Everyone knows the question, but I'll say it anyway if you haven't heard it. And that is, are you allowed to ride a bike on Shabbos? So what did this guy say? He said, you want to know what I do? It's like, no, I could care less what you do. I want to know, according to Jewish law, according to halacha, you allowed to ride your bike or not? He said, well, I ride my bike. Well, that's not an answer. I ride my bike. I do this and I do that. So what? You get a source for it in Jewish law? No. You ever learn Jewish law? No. Okay? Not gonna take what you say that seriously. Right? It's not an opinion question. It wasn't like, do you ride a bike and why? The question was, according to Torah, you allowed to ride a bike, yes or no? You want to know my opinion? That's not an answer. For goodness sakes, say I don't know what the Torah says. I don't know what the rabbi said. At least say that. Don't act like a buffoon and say, oh, my opinion, this is what I do. Let's go back to the question. Right? I didn't ask what you do. I asked what the halacha is. And he can't tell you what the halacha is because he doesn't know. And he's never learned because they don't learn these things. They go to rabbinical school. They learn how to make sermons. They learn a little bit about Bible. They learn, maybe a little bit about Talmud here and there. They certainly can't learn a lick. No question about that. I know somebody went to a yeshiva I started out in, and I saw him there. So I said, whatever, it's a conservative guy going to, learning Talmud for a year. So I told him, he's studying to become a conservative rabbi, and that's what he became. Right? So I told him this is going to be the only time you ever get to do any serious learning. The guy looked at me and said, I was expecting a comment like that, from me. See, I was already smart out back then. So I said, but that wasn't, I wasn't joking. When, when in your, down the line, you're going to be this pulpit rabbi, when are you going to have set times you're going to really sit and really learn? And what's the answer? They're not going to, because they don't. The vast majority. They don't learn this stuff. They learn other things, totally irrelevant. Right? So what are they learning to be, to be this conservative rabbi? A little bit of Bible, maybe, a piece of Talmud here and there, maybe a little bit about Midrash. I mean, I used to know this, quite well. My memory eludes me now. But they have to know how to pray, right? Certainly that's important. You have to know how to lead a service. Also you have to know the cycle. Have to know about death and mourning. Things like that, marriage. But they're not learning the laws like we would learn them. right? You go from the Talmud to the early commentators, later commentators, whatever. They're not learning. They're learning, basic of basics. So, these people, this was years ago. I remember I was interviewed and I was studying to become when I was in rabbinical school in New York, and a local paper interviewed me, about what do you call it? About being a rabbi and this and that. And, conservative reform rabbis, when they come out, after they finish, quote unquote, their ordination, they're making almost six figures, right? Or very close. I don't know too many Orthodox rabbis making that kind of money, right? So I'm in the wrong profession, right? Probably. But in the end, in the end, it's a joke. It's an absolute joke. They know anything about prayer? Not too much. They learn a little bit about Jewish history. Okay. Right. So they learn a little bit about a lot of things, which makes them an expert in nothing. Can't take what they say serious about anything. If they're business people, okay, maybe they know about business. Judaism, they don't know. It's not possible. Not possible by the curriculum they go through. Because what do we base who's a rabbinic scholar or not? Rabbi just means a teacher, right? But what's the base? What do we base it on? That we stand up for a rabbinic scholar. It's the knowledge they have. You're worshiping the knowledge that they have, right? The Gemara says a number of places, the stupid Babylonians, that's exact translation. The stupid Babylonians will stand up for a Sefer Torah. When they bring out the Torah scroll, they'll stand up for it. When a rabbi walks in, they won't stand up for him, and he represents what the Torah is. How can that be? He said they're fools, right? In other words, you're showing respect for the knowledge they have, right? That's what distinguishes people here. Knowledge, right? Also actions, character traits. Right? But what is the bottom line by the ultra-Orthodox community? How much you know? How much you've gone through? All right. Also, we learned other things, but bottom line, how much have you learned? These guys, come on. I studied there. I know what they go through. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. Someone told me, belong to a conservative, really reconstructions. I don't know exactly the difference. The synagogue, we're here to be entertained. That's what someone told me. That's what the rabbi's supposed to do. He's supposed to entertain. And you pay him that money to entertain? Bring a comedian. Bring a comedian. Why not? Knowledge, I'm going to respect their knowledge. Not to mention the fact that they're heretics. They don't believe the Torah is from God. And, whatever. The list goes on. I could be here till tomorrow. Going through all this. I'm not going to. But the point is that, we live in what we call a lama de shikra, an olam of sheker, a world of falsehood. That's what it is. People have this respect and this. Come on. Can this person learn Rashi in Rashi script? That'd be impressive. Does he know what the blessing over strawberries? I had somebody. I'm just going to throw this out there. Somebody told me they were going through a reform conversion. There was a reform conversion. And they realized that really the Torah is true and you have to keep all the mitzvahs. So I said, great. So you got to start to learn. The person said, but I already paid for the classes. So I said, okay, take it as a loss. You gave charity probably to a place you shouldn't have given it to. Okay. So you'll take it as a loss. You move on. The person said, but I've already paid for it. I couldn't get it out of his head. I already paid for it. But I said, you don't believe what they're saying. You don't believe, what they stand for and this and that. So I said, I started going on and just sort of like, ranking these rabbis out in different things. So I said, I'll give you a test. I'll give you a very easy test just to show what they don't know. I said, ask your rabbi. You can't go to Google. Right? You can't go to Rabbi Dr. Google. Ask him on the spot. What's the blessing over a strawberry? You don't even have to ask him why. Let's see if he knows. You think Reform rabbi learns anything about blessings? They don't learn anything about blessings. Certainly not everyday blessings. Strawberries are a little more complicated. Whole thing, it grows on a bush. It's not a bush. It's a tree. It's complicated, right? And not such a simple issue. I asked him a few questions. I said, he can't go to Google. Ask him a question about Shabbos. Relatively simple question about Shabbos. I haven't heard, I said, see if he answers you. See if he answers. Yeah, I'm still waiting. Right? It's a joke what they learn, what they don't learn. Right? So a person got to be careful. It doesn't matter what their edifices look like, what their buildings look like, they're all going to disappear. Where I grew up, all these synagogues dropping like flies. But you can't pass it down. Right? But it's about integrity also. Right? People have to have integrity. You can say, but some Orthodox Jews don't have integrity. Okay? So we have what to work on also. But people respect titles, even if there's nothing behind it. Even if there's totally nothing behind it. I'll just give one example. There are a lot of questions here I'll deal with in a second. People have all, the ultimate respect for a PhD. Now, I'm not going to sit here and poo-poo a PhD. Right? A PhD person worked very hard. Right? A lot of hours. You have to work on, a dissertation and this and that. But let's remember one thing. A dissertation can be on one aspect of one subject. Right? Imagine, I took a number of courses in history, right, on World War II. Don't make me an expert by any stretch. I don't have an MA. I don't have a PhD. But imagine if I wrote a PhD on the socioeconomic situation of the Third Reich between the years 1933 and 1940. Now let's analyze that for a second. Does that make me an expert in World War II? No. It doesn't. It's a specific thing. Right? One specific thing. People jump up and down. Say, wow, I'm not saying it's not a lot of work. Right? People have to realize what's the topic they're getting it in. Give me some minutia detail, something is that, of one aspect of one subject, but the subject's a huge thing. You can respect the work, the hours, the efforts. Does that mean they're an expert in that, in the entire thing? Certainly not. It's one aspect. Might be a small aspect. Might be a very small aspect. People say, you're just jealous. You don't even have an MA. You're right. I don't have a PhD either. Okay? I didn't go further because I need to use my degree for anything. Came in handy once. Definitely came in handy once. But in any case, I spoke about that last week. But in any case, people give respect. I'll give another example, more relevant example. Someone walking in my house, secular Jew. You're walking in my house, you see 5 bookcases. 5 bookcases, all full of books. Right? At least in the front. Underneath, different issue. But under one bookcase has a whole bunch of books in English. And where I'm sitting now, I got a whole bunch of, 2 bookcases there of English books, another place also. So probably have 1,500, 2,000 books, whatever it is. Anyway, person looks at all these Hebrew books. They look at all these Hebrew books and says, it's not possible for someone to learn all this. Now, there are great people in the generation that do know all this. That do have that knowledge. Encyclopedic knowledge like that. My Rebbe being one of them. Rav Chaim Kanievsky, blessed memory, was another. Plenty. Right? Now, why do they say that? Because they're saying it's a waste of time. Why bother learning? Why bother learning? You're never going to know everything over here. There's just so much. More commentaries. More on top, this, that, early, later, more modern, whatever. There's a lot to know. You're right. But I guarantee, if you walked into a lawyer's office, and you saw in the lawyer's office, he's got 3 bookcases full of books, you're going to be impressed. Person going to be impressed. Well, look, he's got all these books, so knowledgeable. Walk into a doctor's office, let's say, they have all these books out. Probably they don't, but let's say, right? Then you go, wow, looks, they're not going to say not possible to know all this information. No one's going to make such a statement to a doctor or a lawyer, or maybe even a historian. Why? What's the major difference? Very simple. They respect it. They respect what the person does. It's a lawyer, doctor, historian, whatever. Whatever it is. Torah, they don't respect. So Torah, they say, guess what? What a waste of time. You've been spending the last 30 years acquiring all these books. Yeah, I swept them all over the place. These books went from Israel to South America to America, and America back here. So I said, why don't you just get rid of some of these? I'm like, no. I said, I don't care how much it's going to cost. I worked hard all these years getting all these books, going through a lot of them. I'm not going to just give them up. It's my whole life here, 30 years. Right? So, yeah, it sounds kind of offensive. Oh, no one can ever memorize, know all this. Well, people try. Right? But what's behind what they say? Right? What's behind what they say? What's behind what they say is it doesn't matter. That's what's behind it. It's a waste of time. Listen to all these classes, all these videos and whatever. That's a waste of time. Right? Someone says, come on, isn't there more to life than the Bible? Like what? Football. Food. Entertainment. Come on, fill in the blank. What's more important? Anything more important than God? Anything more important working on, bad character traits? Preparing for Rosh Hashanah. Anything more important than that right now? No. We're fighting for our lives right now. Biggest court case of our life right now. Right now, I got one more week. One more week to go. You want to tell me something more important than that? No, I'll take fantasy. Come on, someone will say, oh, what about family? Isn't family important? Yeah, family is important. Was that the most important thing? It's an aspect, but it's not the most important thing. Yeah, person should be married. A person should get married. Is that true? Right? Everything according to what God wants. That's what we're here for. Everything else is fantasy. But fantasy is fun. We get caught up in fantasy. True. Like someone said to me, you like to pray all day, you like to play golf. You know how untrue that statement is? How foolish that statement is? I pray all day. No, 40 minutes in the morning, 15 in the afternoon, 15 at night, give or take. Let's see, 40, 55, you got 70 minutes, an hour and 10 minutes. That's not all day. It's like a hobby. You like to do this, I like to do that. You like chocolate, I like vanilla. That's what you compare religion to? Come on. Anyway, I digress here. Somebody asks, if you think something about someone and you say it to yourself, Lashon Hara, no, it's not Lashon Hara. Lashon Hara means you said it. If you thought it, normally we say, when a person thinks something, Devarim shebalev eino Devarim. Words in my heart don't matter. Words in my heart don't matter. Now, for a certain thing, my thoughts could go against me. Think about immorality. Even if you don't act on it, it could go against you. Right? Idolatry. Person could say in my mind, person could say, not me, somebody could say, I believe in JC in their minds. Could be liable. Could be liable for that. But if a person thinks something bad against someone else, that Lashon Hara, it's not Lashon Hara. Right? Lashon Hara means, I said it. Right? You only transgress when you say it. Not necessarily when I think it. Think it now. What's the problem with thinking about it? The more you think about it, you might say it. But you're not going to get punished for the thoughts. Those thoughts you're not going to get punished for, but I would say negative thoughts are bad. About anybody. What about people who cause you damage and this and that? Okay. Right? It's kind of hard to get those thoughts out of your head. True. Right? We have to look at the bigger picture, all kinds of things. Yeah, but if you focus on negativity, person will be negative, right? But even if you focus on negativity, let's say you don't say anything. You don't say anything negative about them. Still, you don't want to be thinking about it. I'm not saying it's forbidden, but it could lead you to do other things. It could lead you to say something bad. So that's bad, right? That essentially is bad. Certainly not positive, right? But to say that it'd be forbidden, you get punished by it, no. Only a few things. Only a few things could be like that. Immorality and idolatry. Other things you're not going to get punished like that. Someone asking, resurrection of the dead also apply to someone who comes to knowledge of Hashem. 1 second. Can resurrection of the dead a person, let's say like this, for a person to get a portion of the world to come, right? For a person, the question is going to be, what's the minimal a person has to do in order to have a portion of the world to come, right? So the Ramchal in Derech Hashem, in the way of God, he says you have to hit a certain level. We don't know what that level is. You have to hit a minimal level to make it to the next world. Making it to the next world, that's not necessarily a guarantee to resurrection. In other words, at the end, there's going to be a final judgment. That final judgment is going to be about resurrection. So my guess would be, if a person made it to the world to come, they're probably going to get up at resurrection, right? Now, does this apply to someone who comes to knowledge of Hashem? It depends, right? It depends what they've done in their life. It depends if there's true repentance. If there's true repentance, then yeah, they should be resurrected. If that's the case, they should have a portion of the world to come. It depends on a lot of factors. It depends what they did. It depends where they were holding, in the world. It depends on a number of things. So it's hard to say, in general, just because someone has a knowledge of Hashem, but they were terrible people and they did terrible things and they didn't properly repent, they're not getting a portion of the world to come. Or they might get a tiny portion. That doesn't necessarily mean they're going to get up a resurrection. Again, it's too vague a question. Question is what they did in their lives. That's the question. What did this knowledge come with? Did the acknowledgments come with performing mitzvahs, repentance, right? If a person did enough with that acknowledgement to merit even the smallest portion of the world to come, yeah, then they could get up at resurrection. But just I would say that's already part of the package here, right? In other words, if a person has that knowledge, they should have a portion of the world to come. God's not just going to zap people left and right, right? But they may have to suffer a lot in order to get there. Okay. Someone was accused by a Messianic trying to missionize because you can't worship Hashem and JC at the same time. You're right. Well, it's not missionizing. I was just telling the truth, right? You can't have, you're not gonna have the best of both worlds. Can't be, can't be a Messianic believing, and believe in Torah at the same time. Two contradictory things, 100%. So they're just deluding themselves. They're Christian, right? They're Christians. So are Christians going to have a portion of the world to come? It's idolatry. We hold it's idolatry, even for non-Jews, right? The difference of opinion, but suffice it to say, we'll cut to the chase. They're going to, the vast majority hold that it's idolatry for non-Jews. Not everyone agrees, but the majority do. So it's idolatry, liable for death penalty. It's over, right? They're in trouble. I'm not going to help them, right? So, right, you're right. It's just an excuse to hate Jews, right? Oh, we're missionizing. Oh, the Christians don't. That's the whole platform. Not only that, you know how much money they spend per year missionizing against Jews? Tons, millions, trying to missionize against Jews. Oh, they'll go to deep Africa, missionize, blacks there and this and that. Yeah, but they have a lot of money invested in trying to get Jews. Oh, we're missionizing. Come on. That's exactly what they do. That's exactly their goal. And this bozo in Boca Raton, has this missionary come and speak as a motivational speaker, and there are, countless videos of what his goal is. And his goal is to missionize against Jews. He makes it pretty clear. But he wasn't coming to speak about that. He was coming to give a motivational speech. Thank you very much, you dimwit. Why are you bringing him into your place? Come on. That's why you're bringing him in, because you want to show he's a motivational speaker. He himself has videos, for goodness sakes. He himself has videos on what his goals are. He doesn't hide it. No, those are old. He's repented. Yeah, sure. I got a bridge in Brooklyn to sell you. Cheap, if you want it. Think the guy's repented? Come on. What a joke. What an absolute joke. Someone mentions about a lot of Zionists in the synagogue. There's such a thing as Zionists who helped murder Jews and helped the Nazis. Well, Zionists in Israel at the time refused to ransom Jews. They could have ransomed Jews. They could have raised money to ransom Jews. They didn't. They didn't want these, old Polish Jews that are going to bring religion to Israel. So they have a lot of blood on their hands, no question about it. How'd they help the Nazis? Yamach Shemam V'zichrom, they rot, may their names be blotted out wherever they are. They didn't help them direct, but they could have helped save Jews. They could have, it's on the books, a lot of stories. They had money. They could have helped save thousands of Jews. There was a deal on the table with Eichmann. It didn't happen. Now, the question was, could it be trusted or not? Whatever, but it didn't happen. They didn't want. They did not want. So they got blood on their hands. 100% they have blood on their hands. No question. So, not literally they murdered Jews. They could have saved Jews. Not like they were working hand in hand with the Nazis against Jews. That's ludicrous. Right? They weren't doing that, but they were they refused to help monetarily. They could have helped. They had funds. Could have ransomed Jews. They didn't. Right? So, those Zionists obviously were secular. Rebbe tells a story about his Rebbe, Moshe Snyder, blessed memory, wanted to emigrate to Israel. They didn't want him. They basically said, take your old ways and go home. We don't want old school thinking. We don't want Torah mitzvahs coming to Israel. That's what the Zionists were. That's what the Zionists, the secular Zionists, that's what they were. So could they have ransomed Jews? Yeah, they could have. Wasn't important to them. They didn't want these type of Jews. They wanted new Jews. They wanted Jews going to help build the land. They're going to be secular. Going to speak Hebrew. That's what they wanted. 100% that's what they wanted. But they certainly didn't want, old European Jews. On strawberries from a bush, there's the whole question. It's higher above the ground. It's almost like a tree. Right? So the whole discussion if it's really a blessing that it comes from fruit from a tree or a bush or from the ground. Right? So we hold that it comes from the ground. Right? The blessing of a strawberry would be very proud dumb, right? That it comes from the ground. Someone asked, question from 39. Can you explain two situations? Lighting of Shabbos candles by a woman and when general community ushers in Shabbos early. A woman, when she lights candles, she takes on Shabbos, unless she has intent not to take on Shabbos. Right? In other words, let's say she still has things to do. right? Let's say she wants to daven mincha. She wants to pray the afternoon service. Okay. Right? So she's allowed to do that. She's allowed to light the candles on condition. She's not taking on Shabbos. For a woman, when she lights the candles, normally she takes on Shabbos. Now, the question is, what about when the general community takes in Shabbos early? Now, let's say in the summertime, Shabbos is late, right? In a lot of places, Shabbos comes in late. So let's say there are people that take in Shabbos early. Okay. Now, if there's more than one synagogue, I don't have a problem, right? There'd be no issue because who says you have taken Shabbos early? If there's one community, right? If there's one community, that might be a different issue, right? Right? That might be a totally different issue, which means that, let's say a person lives in a place that's one community, and that community, they pray early. They pray early on Shabbos, right? They don't take in Shabbos the right time, at the normal time because it's too late. So they take it in early. So a woman, in that case, should go like what the community does. But if there's more than one community, if let's say a person lives in a place, there are 4 synagogues, 4 Orthodox synagogues. One takes in Shabbos early, or let's say 2 take in Shabbos early, 2 don't, or 3 take in Shabbos early, 1 doesn't. And you belong to that synagogue, doesn't take in Shabbos early. So I don't take in Shabbos early, right? If there's only one synagogue and that's what the synagogue does, so if I remember correctly, that would be the issue, right? That would be the issue, right? 100%, right? In other words, if there's only one synagogue, they take in Shabbos early, so the woman's taking Shabbos early also. She's also light early. And if she didn't, does she transgress? Not necessarily, right? It depends. If you're telling me everyone in the community takes in Shabbos early, it's one thing. If you're telling me there are different communities within the community and not all of them taking Shabbos early, then it doesn't matter. Then you can go like the other community. You don't have to take who said you have to take in Shabbos early? Right? You don't have an obligation. 100% you don't have an obligation. Taking Shabbos early. If it's one synagogue, there's only one synagogue, might be a different issue. I hope that answered the question. Yeah, let me see here. Yeah, any other questions? And so again, strawberry, even though it's a bush, and seemingly it's above the ground, more than 3 handbreadths from the ground, right? It's definitely bigger than that. So some say maybe it's like a tree. Maybe 100% it's like a tree. And really the blessing should be Brei Priya 8. So anyway, there's a whole discussion. We don't hold that. We hold that strawberry should be Brei Priya Dama. There are certain berries that are Brei Priya 8 because they grow in a bigger tree, right? Unlike a strawberry, right? So anyway, the blessing is going to be Brei Priya Dama, right? That it grows from the ground. Also banana will throw this out there also. A banana definitely looks like a tree, right? Definitely a tall tree. We hold it's Brei Priya Dama, right? For, what happens in the winter, right? Botany 101, right? So basically, a banana, is going to be Brei Priya Dama. Right, because I think that, I don't know if it doesn't give fruits, all year round, or it gives once. Let me just, let me just double check this 1 second. So definition of a tree is if you remove the fruits, the stump is going to remain. It's going to produce more fruit. Right, that would be the case. The blessing is Brei Priya 8. Right, but if it doesn't remain over here, right? In other words, it's the element that needs to remain from year to year to be considered a tree. right? So according to some, it means the roots. It's talking about the roots. That there are roots all year round, it's Brei Priya Eitz, right? In other words, the roots remain year to year. If they're replanted every year, then the blessing is Brei Priya Dhamma. And it grows from the ground. Others say that's really the stem or the trunk. So if it's not allowed, if it's not enough for the plant to be permanent, trunk itself needs to last year to year. So banana is perennial, right? But the entire structure is above the ground, it dies, right? That's what I wanted to say. It dies and regrows, right? So therefore, definition of a tree is a plant whose central stem stays from year to year. This doesn't. It dies and it grows back, right? So therefore, a blessing would be Brei Priya Dhamma, even though it grows, even though it looks like a tree. So that would be the case. So too by strawberry, right? It's perennial, dies and regrows. That's the main reason, right? So therefore, it regrows its roots every year. So therefore, according to the Gonim, as the Talmud says, blessings Brei Priya Dhamma, and it'll apply as well, right? Just like a banana, banana, right? So a strawberry in that sense will be like a banana because it dies and regrows back, right? The roots themselves grow back. So since they die and grow back, that's the blessing, and that's the difference, right? That's the difference between why strawberries and bananas get the blessing of Brei Priya Dhamma. Someone asks, is bamboo a tree? I don't know. Is bamboo a tree? It has the status of a tree? Not sure. Let's see. Looks like a tree. I don't know if you would eat bamboo. Would it be Brei Priya Eitz? Not sure. Let's see. Not sure. First of all, I don't think people are going to eat it. Right? Not sure people are going to eat it. Feed bamboo soups. Bamboo soups, probably shakal. I'll say it's probably shakal. If it's, again, if a person would eat it and it's perennial and the roots don't die, then it'll be Brei Priya Eitz. If the roots die and it regrows, then it'll be Brei Priya Dhamma. That's the bottom line. So I don't know how bamboo grows. If that would be the case, and bamboo grows and it dies, the roots die every year and it regrows, then it would be Brei Priya Dhamma. Otherwise, it'd be shock. Otherwise, it would be Brei Priya Eitz. Someone asked, what about bamboo for a sukkah? That's not a problem, right? The only case for a sukkah is that's to grow from the ground and become impure, right? So that you're allowed to use. Bamboo you can definitely use, right? You can definitely use for the roof of a sukkah. Obviously, you live in a place where there's going to be a lot of wind, so you got to tie it down very well, right? But in general, you can definitely use it for a sukkah roof. People use those. They use mats. But yeah, 100% permissible. No, you could use branches. Etc. Again, you have time down. Can you cut them straight off the ground? Yeah, that's not a problem. They can't be attached to the ground. You cannot use bamboo that's attached to the ground. You have to cut them off, right? Same thing with branches, right? Even if you're gonna let's say you had a huge branch and you're gonna pull it over and tie it down, you can't do that, right? That you're not allowed to do. That you have to have. You have to cut it off. You have to cut it off and attach it. You can get it from a store. It's not a problem. You can cut it off yourself or get it from a store, right? That's not an issue either way. What does it mean? What does it mean a Jew did not accept Shabbos? In other words, a woman who's going to take on Shabbos, She normally, when a woman lights candles, she takes on Shabbos by lighting the candles. Right? She's going to make the blessing. For her, that's Shabbos. She takes on Shabbos. Now, let's say she has intention 100% not to take on Shabbos. She wants to pray. She wants to cook a few things. She wants to put things away before sundown. She's allowed to. She makes a condition in her head. She doesn't have to say it outright. She makes a condition. I am not taking on Shabbos. I'm lighting the candles, but it's not Shabbos for me. She makes a condition. 100% permissible. Not a problem. Definitely not a problem. Somebody asked, what was the burning bush? I don't know. That's a good question. Right? What was it? Why would I assume that it wasn't? What was the thing about the burning bush itself? Right? The burning bush, you have something that seemingly, as the story goes, was being burnt, but it didn't get consumed. Right? Moses saw, and he was intrigued. He saw a bush that was burning, and there's no, with fire, and there's no, what do you call it? It's not burning. The bush is not burning. So the question is, he's sort of seeing God face to face there, and through the smoke or whatever. So the most important thing to take from is the fact that Jewish people became a nation because God came to Moses and says, I want you to go take out the people. Right? So it wasn't necessary just to get his attention, but again, it's a symbol. What's a symbol? It's a symbol that there's going to be a nation, it's going to be born, it's going to go to Mount Sinai, accept the Torah. Right? Now, what's the burning? What would fire represent? Blazing fire. What could it possibly represent? It could also be a soul going upwards, yearning, to, let's say, what's the word? To transcend the physical world, connect to spirituality. Right? This is the first time, by the way, God communicates to Moses. Right? Through this burning bush. Right? So, what does the person have to do? He has to connect. It's a connection with what? With the divine source. That's what it is. The source of all existence. That's what it represents. Right? So the fire itself makes sense. Cannot consume the bush. What are we looking at? Can't escape this world. Right? Maybe sometimes we feel like, we're in a desert place. We feel like a thorn bush, in a desolate place or whatever. But again, we're transcending over here. God showing through this image the fact that he's going to take the Jews, make them into a nation, right? Something that's going to be eternal, something that's never going to change, regardless of what the Christians say, right? We're going to connect to that divine source. That's what it represents. Now, one aspect of what it represents. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, there are no other questions. Then go further. It's going to be a moot point here because it's going to be a lot to cover. So we're not going to do that. So I'm going to stop here. I do this every Sunday, 9 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Next Sunday will be Erev Rosh Hashanah. Will be right before Rosh Hashanah, so there won't be any class on the Book of Leviticus. Won't be any classes on Sunday, Sunday, Monday, or Tuesday for that matter. But we'll be back week after Rosh Hashanah, before Yom Kippur. Otherwise, anyone has any questions, feel free. You can find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman or Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RBBICHAIMCOFFMAN@gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day.